Thank you, Charlotte. It's my pleasure and honor to moderate this session. Just a brief note before I introduce my esteemed colleagues. I really listened with very much enthusiasm to Professor Sheikh's presentation. I want to get a promise, hopefully later on, that this will extend beyond 1947, because I'm very much interested in the 50s. My mother joined AUB in the 1950s, and the only condition for her father to approve her joining AUB was that she should join with her cousin, who was a female. So they used to come, Wafiqa and Samiha Sidani, they used to come together to AUB in the 1950s. So I'm really waiting for the sequel to this. We have a very interesting panel about faculty research and education. I'm going to introduce the panelists one at a time. And the first is Dr. Samhita Suniye, who is an assistant professor of visual culture in the Department of English. Her research and teaching interests include world film history. She has a long bio, but I'm not going to read it because we are pressured by time. But the only important thing, I think, well, one of the important things to mention is that she is the coordinator of the minor in gender studies at AUB. She'll be presenting an update regarding the recently revamped interdisciplinary gender and women's studies minor at AUB, its history, current status, and possible future directions. Thank you.
Good evening. I am so grateful to be here to see all of these presentations, to the administrators, colleagues, staff, and students who are present for this evening, both in substance and in spirit. One of the joys of being a newer faculty member is that every day there are surprises. So one of the surprises that came was this both responsibility and opportunity to take on the gender studies minor as an initiative. This is a minor that has been on the books for quite some time, but very quickly it became apparent that it was completely outdated. So on one hand, with things like the founding of the Gender and Sexuality Club, which Patrick Haddad will speak about later, and the great student interest in gender, women's studies, sexuality studies, in addition to all of the research that now you'll hear about, as well as the sort of historical and policy-based work around gender and equity, it just seemed like a very, very important time, and it would be a missed opportunity to not take care of this. So the good news to report is that this minor, as of about a month ago, is up and running. I'm also happy to share this update with you all because it's also an opportunity to inform those to whom I may not otherwise have an opportunity to interact about this, to solicit input, as well as to hear about how you might like to be involved. So this is also kind of a pitch to please come forward. I would love to meet you, to introduce yourselves. My graduate assistant, Vanessa Breeding, and I started on this early this academic year. And there were a few problems. The three major problems with the minor as it was, as I said earlier, the course requirements were outdated. They were courses that were offered either occasionally or not at all anymore. They were somewhat inflexible. One of the things that we found was that a lot of the gender and women's studies courses were offerings that were either special topics, seminars, so sort of once-only courses. So this was another challenge. When you're trying to put courses on the curriculum for a minor, how do you deal with the fact that as exciting and interdisciplinary as gender and women's studies offerings can be, a lot of them were taught either by visiting faculty as sort of once-off courses or by faculty in departments who were teaching these courses just occasionally. And then finally, this minor is now being housed in the Department of English. So one thing that was very striking was that there were very few English courses as well that were part of the minor as it had stood on the books. The steps into sort of revamping this included combing through the offerings, so going through the catalog in detail, almost course by course, because sometimes it's not easily apparent in terms of whether a course is about gender, women's studies without those keywords in the title. And eventually, we got to the point where we mined enough courses from all over different faculties, different departments, to come up with a list of about 7 courses, including gender and language and gender and sexuality in the English department, reproductive health in the health sciences, as well as sexuality and public health, courses like gender and classical Islamic society and history, gender and culture, and so on and so forth. And I think that the most important thing that was necessary to sort of structure or restructure this minor was to add a very, very important paragraph for the requirements that said that 15 credits in these courses would satisfy the requirements, in addition to credits from special topics, seminars, and/or course sections with emphases on gender, sexuality, women's studies, with approval by the chair. So this makes this very, very flexible and kind of open to change, interdisciplinary, and able to adapt to the nature of a lot of the gender and women's studies work that has been underway at the university in terms of faculty who do research in this area and then who teach in these areas. In terms of future visions for this, another kind of really exciting thing that's happening, and again, something that I'm really glad to share with a wide audience right now, is that right now a search is underway for a gender and women's studies faculty member in our department. So the talks will begin on Friday and then go through next week. We have 3 candidates, so please stay tuned to those announcements which we have been sending out. The idea is that this faculty member will join and will be able to sort of coordinate this minor, offer a sort of intro to gender and women's studies course, which is another sort of absence that we have diagnosed and something that we wish or we hope that will very soon be implemented into these things. So I think that here a lot of the presentations speak to a lot of dreams in terms of policies, centers, collectives, collaborations, major students, resource centers, colloquia. This event today itself is a testament to those dreams, and I think that a small but very significant step in that direction is to have sort of aggregated and re-offered this minor now. And in terms of the gentleman's earlier statement that isn't this about time, I think that for sure, and I think all of these things are dovetailing in a really fortuitous way in the sense of, and I think that also speaks to the sort of collaborative, the necessity of collaboration around all of this. Thank you.
Dr. Sawsan Abdurrahim. She is Associate Professor and Chairperson in the Faculty of Health Sciences at AUB. Her research cuts across the areas of social inequalities, and her talk today will pertain to that. She'll be discussing the specific case of Palestinian women in Lebanon.
Thank you very much. I'm going to sit here. I only have 3 slides at the end that I will show. I'm at the Faculty of Health Sciences, where the majority of the faculty are women, and it's a hospitable place for women in general. But of course, there are always things that need to be improved and done at the university level with respect to gender. What I'm going to do in the 7-minute talk that I'm allotted is to situate my talk in the issue, in the context of the importance of education for women, and the importance of education for people on the margin, women and men and women on the margin in Lebanese society. So what I'll do is I'll talk a little bit about the faculty, just a couple of things, and then move on to present just very, very briefly one area of research that I'm working on that's near and dear to my heart, and that's really for someone who's not in the Faculty of Health Sciences would think, why is someone there doing this type of research when they're supposed to be working on maybe breast cancer or reproductive health? But I want to say first that in the Faculty of Health Sciences, the leadership has invested a lot of energy and effort and time into working on bringing in students or young people from the margin of Lebanese society and providing them with an opportunity to come and study at AUB. We have a number of scholarships that are given to undergraduate students, one scholarship to undergraduate students, and we have also scholarships for the Masters of Public Health program. These are programs that are making a difference in our faculty and changing the environment and the culture in terms of student interactions and in terms of teaching. But what we need to ask is then what happens after people get an education? What does education buy for different people, different types of people, or people who come from different places? And this is a concept that relates a little bit to intersectionality, which is a theory or a concept or a framework that is used a lot in feminist research, which explains that the experiences of women or people in general, women in particular, is not the same. Different women experience their gender differently. Middle-class women have a lot more opportunity in life than women who come from rural areas or from low-income families. Palestinian women, for example, or non-citizens in general would experience their gender differently in Lebanon. And this is one of the areas that I'm interested in, and I've started to work on, and I continue to work on. My first research on this was based on a data set that the Faculty of Health Sciences collected in 3 underprivileged suburbs around Beirut, Burj al Barajna, Hayy al-Sillam, and Nab'a. And this data was collected before I joined AUB, but I used it to look at what happens when women from these communities work and how much do they earn. Of course, the idea at the end is that education buys health at the end. Our final outcome that we are interested in is health. And the relationship between education and health can go through multiple different types of pathways, one of which is that people who have higher education earn better wages, have more security, and then they have better health later on in life. So when I first came to AUB, everyone was saying that these 3 communities are similar. There's no difference by ethnicity, all 3 communities have poverty, and so their health would be determined by poverty first and foremost. But the research I did actually showed that Palestinians actually experience more disadvantage in terms of their health outcomes compared to the Lebanese, and that Palestinian women have the worst outcomes. If we look at wages, for example, in that data set, Palestinian women actually have the best profile, the best educational profile. However, their wages are the lowest. Women who work earn the lowest wages. So Palestinian women earn lower wages than Palestinian men, and they also earn lower wages than Lebanese women. This was my first experience working on the subject of education and wages. And then I started to read more on this, and there's a lot of literature out there that talks about the education-work paradox in the Arab region. So the data from the Arab region shows that since the 1980s, actually Arab women, in many Arab countries, not all, in many Arab countries, actually women are doing better than men when it comes to educational attainment. However, women are joining the labor force less, and when they do, they are earning less compared to men. So I'm extending this to look at something that I call the education wage paradox, and to look at, try to search in data sets that are available to look at what happens when women attain higher education in general, and also what happens, is there a difference between women who come from different backgrounds? And I'm currently using a data set that was collected by the International Labour Organization with Palestinian refugees in Lebanon. And the data show very clearly, again, that Palestinian women have a better educational profile compared to Palestinian men. However, when we look at the wages that women who work earn, their wages are always lower to men, regardless of their educational level and regardless of the job or the occupation that they engage in. The education wage paradox actually talks about the fact that with higher education, the gender pay gap between men and women increases and does not decrease. So even though UN documents advise or argue that in order for there to be gender equity in society, we need to get more women into the labor force, more women working. In fact, with higher or have more women earn higher education. In fact, as women earn higher education and when they go out, what happens is that the gap between what they earn and what men of equal educational level earn increases and doesn't decrease. So I think that's something that needs to be understood and needs to be examined very carefully as policies related to work and related to education move forward in Lebanon and in Arab countries as well. Do I have just... Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Dr. Fida Afyouni is an associate professor of human resource management at OSB here. Her research focuses on the interplay of human resource management, careers, and gender in the Arab Middle East, with a particular interest in identifying the best HRM practices in the region. HR policies in support of women's career development, as well as individuals' chosen career patterns. She'll be talking about her research on women's participation in the labor force in Lebanon. Fida.
Thank you, Yusuf, for the introduction. I'm very excited to share with you today my research around females' economic empowerment in the Middle East and North Africa. And I'm happy to be presenting after Sausan because I'm going to start from where she left. And I'm going to start by the guiding research question to my research, which is the following. Why is women's economic participation and opportunity low in the MENA region? Is it because of macro-level factors, such as, for example, patriarchy, lack of legislations, different gender role expectations? Is it due to organizational factors, such as discrimination, harassment, lack of flexible work arrangements, work-life balance policies, or diversity policies? Or is it due to personal choice, perhaps that women are just not interested in gainful employment, or perhaps they have a very different conceptualization of what success is in life. Before I continue, I'm going to give you just a background information about the region so that you know where my research is coming from. And I want to talk very briefly about the Global Gender Gap Index. It was developed by the World Economic Forum in 2006 in order to assess inequalities between men and women along 4 dimensions: health, education, politics, and economy. And then it included 145 countries. I'm going to focus specifically on economic participation and opportunity that encompasses 3 concepts. One concept is the participation gap, or to what extent men and women have equal access to employment. The wage gap, which is to what extent they have equal pay for the same job. And the advancement gap, which is to what extent they have equal opportunity to advance to senior level positions. When we look at the Global Gender Gap Index in the world, we see that our region is really faring the worst. When we zoom on Lebanon more specifically, we score 138 out of the 145 countries in terms of economic participation and opportunity. Now, what happens is when we put together two sub-indices of this Global Gender Gap Index, which are in the red bar, the educational attainment, and in the blue bar, the economic participation and opportunity. We see something very interesting. We see that, as Sausan mentioned, we're doing relatively okay in terms of educational attainment. We have closed the gap by over 95%. But when we look at the economic participation, we see that this has not followed. So we see a great difference between the red bar and the blue bar, which is the high education, low employment paradox that is driving the research. So to address these puzzling paradoxes, I'm going to examine, or present very briefly some of the research that I have been doing. But first, I want to say how it all started very briefly. It started in 2010 when a colleague of ours at the business school was asked to present something about why women in STEM are not well represented. And she came to us, my colleague Charlotte Karam and myself, at that time, 2 assistant professors, and we started reading about the issue, and we were very interested. So we decided to start a first project on women in academia in the MENA. We were lucky to have a fund, and we were able to look at issues of representation, as well as advancement and success. We tried to connect individual-level career decisions with organizational-level policies and macro-level factors, and we covered a variety of countries in the MENA. And we were able to publish 4 papers that look at these interplays and dynamics. Another project that we are also interested in is women's economic participation and opportunity more broadly. And here we have hold of 2 great data sets. One data set is of women who are educated and not currently working, to examine why is it that they are not working, and we have 2 papers in progress, and another one with highly successful women. And we're going to see 2 women embedded in the same context have developed very different responses, and here would be the key perhaps to understanding the triggers to increase females' economic participation. And there are many, many projects underway that we don't have time to discuss. So what did we learn? We learned that women's employment and career decisions are affected by cultural and institutional contexts in which they are embedded. So we have constantly this structure-agency debate. We also noted that patriarchy is really woven in fabrics of families, organizations, and societies, and leads to a vicious circle of oppression. We also noticed that women struggle to access employment, to balance between work and life, and to access higher level positions. And of course, I'm sure that every economist and sociologist in the room would agree that we cannot lead to the development of the country or the region unless women have equal participation and opportunity. So how to move forward? Well, the high level of education, as we have seen, leads to the idea of a bursting pipeline of women who are really ready and have the right skills to join the workforce, but are unable to secure employment and unable to secure equal opportunities. And multi-level efforts are needed at the government, at organizational levels, families, and individuals in order to afford women economic participation and opportunity. And finally, there is more need for interdisciplinary research to move this field forward and to give it momentum and increase its impact. Thank you.
Dr. Nuhad Yazbek-Dumit is an assistant professor at the Rafiq Hariri School of Nursing at AUB and the technical consultant of ABSU on nursing. She's the convener of the undergraduate program at the School of Nursing. Dr. Dumit will be presenting the role of female faculty members leading the Hariri School of Nursing and positioning it as the leader in nursing education and research in Lebanon and the region. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Sidani, and thank you, organizing members, for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to present about nursing research and education. There will be a little bit of overlap with the Dr. Sheikh presentation, and as Dr. Sidani said, the School of Nursing, which is a female profession, nursing is a female profession, has really led nursing education and research, not only in Lebanon, but in the country, as I will be showing. So, 1905 was the beginning of professional nursing education in the Middle East at what is called the Syrian Protestant College then. So the standards of modern nursing was set then. In 1923, 10 nursing students graduated with the rest of the university students, because before they were graduating alone. It was a certificate program. In 2532, so there is a discrepancy in the numbers of Dr. Sheikh and myself. We will figure that out later on. But that year was significant because that certificate program became a diploma program that follows the education of nurses in the USA. In 1930, high school certificate was required for admission, and in 1936, another landmark in the history of the School of Nursing and AUB, we started the 5-year BSN Bachelor of Science in Nursing program, the third place after USA and Canada. So we were the third, and we positioned ourselves in the history map of nursing. In 1950, the first Lebanese nurse and the first in the Middle East was sent to USA, sponsored by AUB, to do her master's in nursing education and come back and teach in nursing. Mrs. Wadad Shaya, I had the privilege to be her student. She came back and not only led education, but also led the nursing profession. She was one of the founders for the Order of Nurses. Then in 66, the BSN admission recruitment was the same as that of AUB. Before it was high school, freshman in 3 years, and then it became the same as that of AUB. In that time, it was Esther Moyer. I think one of the pictures that Dr. Sheikh presented, she was in one of those pictures. And at that, in 1966, we, as a nursing program, were registered with the New York State Education Department. In late 70s, the School of Nursing, and here Dr. Rumful has a major hand in that, we started training nurses and creating nursing programs in the Gulf countries, Qatar, Emirates, Bahrain, etc. And this is with AUB and with AUB School of Nursing, nursing education started in the Gulf countries. In the 1980s and 90s, despite the war, we kept doing self-studies to maintain the quality of our education, and as if we are preparing ourselves for accreditation. In 2004, we started our MSN program. That culminated in being the first nursing program accredited by the Committee on Collegiate Nursing Education in 2007, the first outside USA. Then we were reaccredited again in 2012 for 10 years unconditional, and we are so proud of this achievement. As for research, with Ms. Moyer that I talked about, she created the idea of how important for nursing faculty and nurses to participate in research. And then faculty started reading whatever research, nursing research available or healthcare research available. In the 1980s, the year I graduated, we had the first regional nursing conference at AUB, where we had nursing scholars from the West presenting their research. Then we were acquainted closely to what is nursing research. As a student, the senior class, we were actively involved in that regional nursing conference. In 1993, we had the first nursing research done at AUB by the School of Nursing. It was the first in Lebanon, but the second after Jordan in the region. And at that time, we had a few research projects where we, as faculty of the School of Nursing, where we presented. In 1993, it was the first research done by Dr. Farhoud and a database publication from AUB School of Nursing. In 1999, we did the first international nursing research, led by Dr. Makarim. In 2004-05, we started having programs of research at the School of Nursing, also under the leadership of Dr. Huda. So we have 5 nursing programs of nursing research that started in 93 by Dr. Farhood, 97 by the Arabian Health Promotion, Pain and Palliative. Dr. Hayer then joined as the director of the School of Nursing and brought her research with her. Cardiovascular, Dr. Nuruddin, and nursing workforce, myself. Dr. Hayer was awarded recently as the International Nurse Research Hall of Fame member by the Nursing Honor Society. As for the nursing workforce research that I had the honor of doing that with a colleague, Dr. Fadi Jardali from Faculty of Health Science, and another part with Dr. Lina Oiri from the OSB. In a nutshell, we have more than 7 publications between this here and there. The female dominant profession nursing, and I will be very happy to compare with the faculty findings once the task force under Dr. Harithi we finish our mandate. So they live they have unfavorable work environment, unfair work conditions, imbalance between family life and work demands. We'll see how does it compare with the faculty. They're not working to their full potential, which is leading to leaving the profession within 3 to 5 years. Also leading to internal and external migration, external more among males because they are more mobile, socioculturally acceptable, and a high prevalence of sickness absence among females. So this is my area of research. It doesn't stop here. We try to close the loop by taking and leading action that regulates the nursing workforce in the country, and we're affecting the region, by the way. As an example, 3 out of the 5 presidents of the Order of Nurses in Lebanon are School of Nursing graduates, starting with the director of the nursing program in Balaman, Mrs. Helen Samah Hanwayed, who's here with me, and myself currently. And thank you.
Dr. Lina Ghaibi is an animation and comics and illustration artist. She is also a full-time faculty member in the Department of Architecture and Design at AUB. She teaches courses in motion graphics, stop-motion animation, interactive media design, and illustration. Her talk will cover her work as a female Arab artist and as an educator in the field of illustration, comics, and animation, as well as the representation of female character models in her work.
Okay. That was just a small part that is not the... Okay, I'll turn this. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's fantastic to be here. I'm very fortunate to be at the Department of Architecture and Design, where I have a wealth of fantastic women who are role models. I have with me my great colleague, Huwaid Al-Harithi, who is a mentor, a friend, and so many other women who work there and who are give a wonderful environment that really promotes the gender equity, absolutely. Our only problem, in fact, is we lack gender equity in our students. We need to recruit male students. So my name is Lina Ghaibi. I teach at the Department of Architecture and Design in the scope of graphic design. And as the professor just mentioned, so I'm not going to go over that again. I started teaching in the department early on, just at the initiation of the graphic design program in 1992-93. And as a part-timer for 12 years, and then I joined full-time in 2006. And I'm saying this because I was asked at that time, I was working at an animation department where I was the only female animator. And in a team of animation artists, and together we launched the animation department at a local TV station where we produced animations and motion for TV. And as part of that experience, I was asked by the director of the program, Dr. Leila Musfi, if I would like to develop a course on motion graphics that could be included in the curriculum. And since then, I launched the digital media courses in the department, including the motion graphics and animation, interactive media design, among others, which are the first in Lebanon and, in fact, the region. So last year, I launched the Ma'taz and Rada Sawaf Arabic Comics Initiative at AUB. The initiative aims to promote and facilitate the research and the production and teaching of comics, and to provide a historic repository at our wonderful libraries in the archives with Dr. Shbaro, I don't know if she's here, for this rich heritage of comics through the library. I'm just going to very briefly touch on something about comics because people tend to mistake it for other things. So comics, especially those for children, have been around in the Arab world for a long time, over 70, 80, 90 years. But the past few years have witnessed a sudden rise in the number of comics that are targeting adults in particular. Since the uprisings, this has been noticed, and with it an unprecedented growing interest and following. Since then, okay, we went backwards. The genre of comics in the Arab world has not grown out of nowhere. There's a rich heritage and a wealth of experience. And the adult graphic novel has publicly emerged only recently. Targeting adults has become more widespread in Egypt and in the region. Stemming from this wonderful heritage of women illustrators in the Arab world, with such as Lujaina Al-Asil, who just got the award today for this year for lifetime achievement, and more recent women such as Zainabi Rashid, Jumana, Lena Mirhaj, etc., we have an increasing amount of female contributions in the comics. The recent uprisings in Egypt and all the Arab nations has highlighted social problems that have been plaguing these countries and where they started in. And the platform of comics has offered a stage to criticize the status quo and forcing many such issues that previously were unspoken of to come to the surface. Of such, women's issues came to the foreground and were featured prominently in major concerns in the depictions. These concerns were addressed as main themes, such as harassment in some of the magazines, or through introduction of powerful female characters. A strong female hero comes to the rescue of women, and Al-Qahira, playing on the word of Cairo in Arabic, and also the defeater. Shakmagiya magazine appeared in Egypt in 2014, is the first feminist comic magazine, especially dedicated to promoting their plight and looking at addressing issues facing women and men from a feminist and human rights perspective. This is a clear sign of the importance of this issue and urgently needing it to be represented. While cartoons and animation tends to be a male-dominated area in the West, including and in the Arab world. However, from the onset of the adult graphic novel in this region, it seems to have gathered a fair number of female authors and artists, evident in the contributions of the contemporary publications that we're seeing. Okay, I'm going to just talk a little bit about the scope of being an illustrator myself and comics and animation artist, as well as an educator in these areas. My creative work explores issues of identity and belonging, both simply as being an identical twin, female identical twin, as well as a bicultural woman. Here is the work that was a digital work that is called Going Under. It's shown at the Forces of Change exhibition at the National Museum for Women in the Arts. And the series of Metamorphosis photographic series that I worked on. Women's rights and the power of women, their voice and representation has always been present in my work and my teaching, if not an end in itself, whether in the form of simply selecting female characters over the dominant male option of representation, or representing strong, daring, or alternative female characters, or simply practicing as animation because there were none other than myself. Female characters across various stages of life feature in my work, as do characters in different roles and discussing various issues. I'll start with this one, which is part of which you saw now, but it was for Women's Day. That's old.
عنصر مهم في المجتمع ولها حق تقرير مصيري. إن المرأة عنصر مكمل للرجل تأتي
This actually happened to me. It's Women's Day, Arab Women's Day. That's usually how we're featured. We get no vacation. Okay, I'll try to go quickly over this. This is for a youth channel that breaking the norms.
When you're 21, you gotta start thinking about getting a man, getting a son, getting a daughter. Just like the mom when she was 21. But even though Fatima's not ready for it, she not gonna say something. She feels she gotta do this for the parents, cause they've been on it for the last 5 years. A lot of man from motherland came up here, hoping she said yeah, but she ain't down. Want somebody that can make her feel alive, chillin'.
العلاق مراحلها في أدق مراحلها.
I won't show you any more of the animations, but I have a film called Ya Waladi about the harrowing experience of a mother of a missing during the Civil War, which depicts her daily life, awaiting for her son's return, as well as The Wind, where I represent the images of women as refugees and displaced communities. By featuring these rich and varied female characters in leading roles in movies and illustrated books, whether targeting an adult audience or young viewers, I hope to create a balanced representation of genders, as well as a variety among both genders and non-stereotypical roles or issues to look up and to relate to. I hope to encourage others to continue in this path. I'll just close with
شو بعمل؟ هذه آخر مرة بوقتك يا رب، خلص آخر مرة بدي أسرق بس لحتى زي ما تعشي 1 2 3 ها 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 ها.
Okay. So I hope to offer, some alternative roles, female character representations. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm done.
Well, Dr. Khouri has a long bio, so I'll read it in preparation. Dr. Brigitte Khouri is a clinical psychologist and professor at the Department of Psychiatry in the Faculty of Medicine at AUB. She has been actively involved in studies related to international and cross-cultural psychology. Her interests in studying sexuality also apply to her work in Lebanon, where she studied the sexual development of Lebanese youth, as well as issues related to child sex abuse. She'll be talking about women's mental health voices from Lebanon and the region.
Well, I don't know why. Thank you. And I have to follow the presentation of Lena. Great. Okay. So, well, thank you for inviting me and to be among this amazing panel of leading women. Thank you for the audience, and thank you for all the men who are here and who are lucky to have amazing women in their lives. So, let me start with an anecdote. So, it was one of those evenings where I'm trying to balance family and work, and therefore coming home, enough time for homework. So I get home a couple of nights ago, and then my daughter is studying her Arabic lesson, Arab. And I apologize ahead of time for all the Arabic department and my ignorance in it, and I apologize for the non-Arabic speaking. So she's studying ذهبت البنت إلى الحفلة, whatever, something. So ذهبت, she's عم تعربها, and then وتاء التأنيث حدا بيعرف؟ لا محل لها من الإعراب. And I was like, suddenly it hit me. I'm like, what? She's like, داء التأنيث لا محل لها من الإعراب. And I'm like, more than 20 letters إلهم محل من الإعراب. داء التأنيث ما لها محل من الإعراب. So here I am, torn between making sure she gets a good grade and knows her lesson, but also, conveying my horror at the sentence. And so I never thought I actually would face sexism when teaching Arab, but I did. Anyway, that was my little story. So I'm going to talk very briefly about some of the research I've done and that involved women in the region, and I wish that the president was still here because I had my wish list for him at the end. Yeah, we'll send it to him. So actually it started in the year 2000, and the book came out in 2002, which was a collaborative work on mental health in the Arab region, women's mental health in the Arab region. It was actually under the leadership of Dr. Huda Zri, I don't know if Huda is here, and who did an incredible job. And it was the first time she puts together, there was a group of women, mental health experts from the region coming together and starting to exchange and talk about, what are the issues that women have in mental health in the Arab region. So we came up with this book called النفس تعاني والجسد يشكو, really emphasizing how much women suffer but express it really in physical and somatic symptoms and hardly talking about it until, unfortunately, it's too late. And we realized that all the women suffer the same way across pretty much. We had colleagues from Jordan, Tunis, the Emirates, Saudi, and we all had similar experiences. So they have the same silent suffering, they're often misdiagnosed, and they're often given the wrong treatments. And then a follow-up actually to the study that Dr. Abdurrahim talked about, it was a collaboration between Faculty of Health Sciences and Faculty of Medicine, which was looking at community health centers in an underprivileged area in Beirut, in Hayy al-Sillum, in Burj Brajna, etc. And we decided that we're going to give something to the women, establish women's groups. So one of the options was teaching them relaxation exercises, and then teaching them how to problem solve in a group format. That was my part. So it was a collaboration between, so it was groups of women, of 10 to 12 women, who would sit and talk about their problems, and the facilitators will teach them what to do with them. And the response was incredible. Of course, we tested for depression and anxiety pre and post, like every good researcher, because we needed to get promoted and publish. But what came out was actually amazing. What was amazing is that although the module finished in 12 weeks, the groups continued. The women needed to be together to sit and talk about their problems and to realize that actually they're not alone and that there are other people, other women like them who are suffering the same way. So we ended up creating a support structure for these women which became very much essential in their lives, the sisterhood that we know and that they had discovered. And then I was approached by the UNFPA, unfortunately, after the Syrian crisis, and they were asking me, what can we do for women? And I thought, let's try this intervention. So we trained health workers. I got the grant actually 3 times. It was such a success. And again, to put together refugee women groups, actually who are Syrian refugees as well as Lebanese from the host communities together, to teach them about problem solving, but actually to establish a social structure. And again, the groups were amazing. And you would think, okay, of course, the refugees coming with horror stories behind them, what would they be talking about? Traumas, the things they left behind, separations. No. They would talk about the mother-in-law that's bothering them. They would talk about their kids who are failing in school. They would talk about the day-to-day life because this is what's pressing them. Of course, later on, with enough time, they would start talking about the trauma. But for now, this was their main concern. And again, the groups continued after the intervention. Oh boy, 2 minutes. Okay. Then we got into sexuality studies. So we did a survey on, Arab youth and, how do they perceive sexuality, their practices. It was internet-based. And what was interesting, it was from all over the Arab world. The data showed positive attitudes and good knowledge about sexuality issues, which I didn't expect. One major finding, and that blew me away, is that women reported a higher frequency of sexual experiences than men. Now, I don't know if they were faking it, or I can't imagine why they would, though, online. And then, however, what was interesting, the openness to talking about it was still limited and very restricted due to family and religious issues. These were the two things that kept them. One of the projects I'm working on now is with the World Health Organizations on sexual disorders. So some of you might know that WHO is revamping the diagnostic criteria. And for the first time ever, they are collecting data from the Arab region, which is incredible, because before we were diagnosing based on data from England and the US and Australia, and we would say, God, that doesn't fit us. There's something wrong with this diagnosis. So hopefully now we would have some data that will be included with that. And again, similar problems all over the region. Women have pain disorders, unexpressed desire, lack of experience, leading, of course, to problems in their marriage and their relationships, and they come very late after that. What are the lessons learned? Women need to start having, and that's my wish list, a safe platform to express their concerns and ask their questions related to any topic. We don't have that yet. We don't have a safe space for women. From a clinician's perspective, they need to have more accessible services specialized for them, whether in mental or physical health, clinics that are women-friendly, not only at AUB, everywhere in the region, especially in remote areas and underprivileged areas. Now, and our research, and that was the proof of some of the projects I talked about, can improve women's lives in the region and give them a voice. So thank you very much. And this is Happy International Women's Day.
I thought my role ended, but you know. So. Well, we still have some time for a couple of questions from the audience. Yes, please. You have a mic for? Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. This is a superb panel. And I want to just preface by saying I'm very, 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 very much pro-women, but there is a problem. You see, I have lived with the Faculty of Health Sciences and with nursing, so I know. But you know, it is only when I got to my daughter that I realized that you cannot only be equal. I mean, women, they are superior.
Absolutely.
I tell you why. No, wait. It's not that I'm not really trying to really be nice. The problem is that unless there are changes in society, that unless you really feel it at home, because we go to work and they go to work if you want really to be equal. But then we do not cook. We do not make sure that the house is okay. We do not teach the children at home. We do not make sure that everything is fine. So unless there is a change in social configuration, women are not going only to be equal. They are superior because they do everything a man does. But yet, now, there is a problem. I finished.
Yeah. Sorry.
But the problem is that it affects them early in their career. This is the point. Maybe later on they can become equal when the children go to school, but it affects them in their career, in their spur. And this is really something that I think you need to really address. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody in the panel would like to address this in like 30 seconds or less? Yes, please.
I mean, I think you're absolutely correct, and I think the most important thing, or the first step, would be to recognize these problems. A very simple example, I always tell students in my class who always address female faculty as miss, that it's not about, I'm not offended by that term, but rather it's about a perception of disparity in authority. You automatically address your male professors as sir, whereas female faculty are automatically perceived as miss, not madame, which would be sort of the equivalent of that. So I think that is the place to start in making this part of conversations in classrooms, and then being aware of these issues in the first place.
Thank you very much. If we have other questions, we'll postpone them till the end because you'll have another chance to field your questions. Thank you very much for my colleagues over here, and I'll turn this to Charlotte. Thank you.
I just want to rectify a mistake that I made. I didn't introduce Dr. Yusuf Sidani, who, by the way, is also a gender scholar and quite a prolific one, working on women's career. He's a professor of leadership and business ethics here at the business school. So thank you, Yusuf, for being with us. So as we set up the next panel, we could maybe take a quick break, just 2 minutes, as the new panel joins us. We have